This is Insight. Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
The Insight program on a Friday the 13th, 2020, right? Yeah, that's a bad combination right there. But nonetheless, we're going to move forward with our program. Here, Mike in for Jeff today on the Insight program. And it's the, what is it, the fourth? No, second. Oh, geez, I'm way ahead of myself. Second Friday in the month of November. So we set aside the second Friday in each month for the Marshfield Police Department. And we have a couple of representatives from the PD with us on the Insight program. And Pat Zepps, Assistant Assistant Police Chief?
Correct.
Is that right? Wrong department. Okay. And Travis Esser, let me see if I got the right microphone. Lieutenant.
Correct.
That's
Good
correct.
morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be
You
here.
guys have been regulars on the Insight program, and glad to have you back again on the show here today. Pat, I'll start with you, and then maybe we'll get Travis's take on this, because obviously the topic of the, month, I almost wanted to say, but topic of the last about 2 or 3 months regarding the Marshfield Police Department, and people in the community are wondering, how are things at the PD? What is the current state of affairs there? We obviously know the situation. It has been well documented with the police chief, Rick Gramza, and the ongoing investigations, the charges now that came out last week, a week ago today. Just talk about, I guess maybe the community is wondering, boy, how are things down at the PD? Just give us a sense of how things are and what kind of impact this has had on the department, if you would, please.
Sure. I think it would be an understatement to say it's had a big impact. There's been a lot of unknowns out there. Certainly it's something we're trying to mediate through. My role in this was to focus on the operations, the day-to-day operations of this. And that's what I think we've done. What I can tell you is obviously there'd be speculation that morale is down, but we have an incredibly hardworking group of people that what I see on a day-to-day basis are people talking, they're engaged, they're working, they're in the community, we're working through this. So I would like to put out a reassurance that that's really what I'm hanging my hat on right now.
How difficult has that been? Has it been difficult to do that?
It can be, because on some levels there's an assumption that I know more than I do. And really that was not my role in this. This is something that's handled on the city level and eventually will end up into the hands of the Police and Fire Commission. So I really stayed within my role as far as what my focus is to the department and the welfare of the officers and the community. So it was a very limited scope, and to imply that I was involved in this, I really wasn't. My focus of purpose was keeping the department operations moving forward.
Which, again, I think that gets lost sometimes. Behind whatever happens on the surface, underneath, there's a department to run and a city to protect.
Correct, and sometimes when these things are hanging over any agency, it can be hard to focus people on that. And that's a challenge, and what I really want to thank is the other leadership within the department, because I've had to rely on them to help me do that, and it's really a collaborative effort. And I've also relied on every officer in the department and every civilian employee that we have, because it equally impacted them. And to really tell them that we all own a part of this, and we all own a stake in what the morale is here, and we all own a stake in what the image we portray to the community is. And I'm not going to say that that's not challenging, but I think we are doing the best we can with what we're presented with.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because, again, the community's sort of wondering, and this sort of happens, like I said, kind of behind the scenes, and you don't think about, hey, there's still a job to do here on the part of everyone. And it can be difficult to do that when you've got a distraction.
Absolutely, and I think one of the key takeaways of this is that we are bigger than any one individual. And we all have to remember that we are bigger than that, and that when our time here is done, there will be a qualified, capable person to move in and take that. And so you really have to look at it as an organization as a whole. Collectively, there is not one person responsible for morale. There is not one person responsible for our image. We all take a part in that every single day, whether it's a brand new officer all the way up to the head of the agency. So we all own that stake, and that's what we've got to do moving forward, is bridge any lack of trust that may come out of this, or perception that we have a cultural problem, because I don't see that.
Right. It's with any organization. It's like a team that has a player, the star player goes out on their bye week and does something crazy or dumb or whatever, and it may reflect on the team a little bit, but there's still a whole another team, or the rest of the players aren't out doing that kind of thing, and you still got games to play.
Exactly, that's a good analogy. We don't get a break from that.
Yeah.
We don't have a period of time where we can try to absorb this and rationalize it, because it is one step in a process that's still moving forward.
What are the, I've never been at that level to, be in any position to, where I have to tell people what to do, not that they would listen to me anyway, right? But are there specific things you can do or are doing to, address things like morale and day-to-day operations of, and let's forget about the elephant in the room and go do our jobs, and here's what we have to specifically do? What are some of the things you do to kind of do that?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. You give the message out. And we all got into this job for a reason. And across the country, you can tie morale into a number of things. It's a very challenging time for law enforcement right now. What we're going through certainly isn't going to help. So for someone to say morale is incredibly low, I don't know that morale is the right term, or how you would even measure that, because under the circumstances, I think that people are doing what they need to do. More specifically to your question, I think I've relied on the lieutenants and the command staff, and I make myself available to the officers. I communicate with them and tell them, I don't have a really good answer to make you feel better right now. But what I can tell you is we do have a job to do, and that's what we swore to do, and that's really, we don't get a break from that.
Yeah.
So
I know, I always think when something like this comes up, I'll use another sports analogy. We're all familiar with the success of the New England Patriots and their great runs, for all these Super Bowl titles and everything. And their head coach, Bill Belichick, his mantra is just do your job. Do your job. If the kicker's having a bad month, don't get on the kicker. Leave him alone. That's not your job to do that, to worry about what is happening with that guy over there, or why he's not doing his job, or why he's struggling, or what have you, or why that guy missed that block, or whatever. It's just do your job. That's kind of been his, the motto he's lived by. If everyone does their individual job, then the whole team kind of moves forward. And I'm sure that's kind of all you can really focus on right now, right? Your title is assistant police chief. Your title is lieutenant. Focus on that job. You're not an investigator. You're not a lawyer. You're not a mayor. You're not a whatever. So you don't have to worry about what they have to do right now.
exactly, and it really comes down to defining what do we need from everybody right now, and that's a great point, another sports analogy. And when you look at Lieutenant Esser, is the Bureau functioning well? Is everybody doing their job? We've got an incredibly high-functioning group of individuals, and I know that's something we've professed for many months and years, that really the success of an organization isn't predicated on me or a chief or a command staff. It's predicated on every individual that goes out there and with honor and integrity serves to the best of their ability. And so we all own that stake. And you really can't point the finger to one individual. Now, that's not to say one individual can't have a great impact on that negatively, but I think we're in a position right now where that focus has to be remained moving forward in the job we have to do.
All right, Lieutenant, I'll ask you, how is the department running? Travis Esser is with us, along with Assistant Police Chief Pat Zepps. Maybe we just want to address some of the things Pat was talking about?
Sure. I would really echo a lot of the things that Pat has said. I mean, I guess I have what you'd maybe call a luxury of not being, in the position that Pat is as kind of the sole head of the department right now. I'm more in that operations section that he's referenced, so it's maybe a little bit easier in my position and some of the positions that I supervise for us to stay a little bit more focused on those day-to-day activities and really hone in on doing our best in those areas. Not that we obviously aren't somewhat distracted and we have a process to go through here, but to just try to refocus as much as we can so that we can move forward sooner than later. But as far as the day-to-day activities go, I think that we're still providing a really quality service to the citizens of Marshfield and with the boots on the ground and what we do. And I haven't seen any setbacks as far as that goes right now, and I'm really thankful to the people that we work with every day that they've stepped up and continue to do that job that we've come to expect of them.
Yeah. So just clarify for us, I don't know how the rank and file works. So lieutenant is where in the pecking order?
Right below the assistant chief. So we have 5 lieutenants. I'm just one of them. We have 4 patrol lieutenants, and I'm currently assigned to the detective bureau as the detective bureau lieutenant. So yeah, I'm not out there patrolling like I used to be, but in the last few months I've been transferred to that area, and it's been good, and I'm serving with a very dedicated and knowledgeable group of people right now. That part of the department I hadn't spent a lot of time in prior to this, but we have some very well-trained individuals that are handling investigations within our department and for the city.
All right, so you don't really deal with like any particular shift of patrol officers or anything like that, or do you?
I used to up until about 3 or 4 months ago, but we do have the 4 patrol lieutenants. They each supervise a patrol shift of 6 officers. And then, like I said, I'm currently supervising a group of detectives, so.
Okay. And do people, do some of those people bring some of these concerns to you? You guys address it within the rank and file, or have you not really had those conversations?
Yeah, we've had some conversations, and I think like Pat spoke of, I think to the degree that we've been provided with information, to the degree that we can, we try to share that with our officers. Obviously, we want to be as transparent as possible and share with them any information that we have that can help them cope and manage and get through this, like I said before, sooner than later.
Yeah. And the other thing we saw this week too, and I'll ask you guys about this because we talked about it briefly before the show, and I had some idea that you guys were probably not involved, but I wasn't sure. But the other night at council, Kevin Hamill got up and basically read a letter and a press release addressing this vote of no confidence that the Marshfield Professional Police Association had taken in Police Chief Rick Gramza. And where does that come from? Or maybe just because you guys, that doesn't involve you guys, or maybe just talk about that. Travis, do you want to address that?
Sure, I can start and Pat can fill in
Okay.
if I miss anything. But yeah, that came from our Professional Police Association, so that's essentially our officers that are within the union, and those are what we would refer to as represented employees. So when we were talking earlier about the department having 5 lieutenants and an assistant chief and chief, that group of people are considered non-represented. We are not in the union, so we weren't necessarily an integral part of that letter, but the 32 remaining sworn officers, other than us 6, it would be, were part of drafting that letter and then reading it aloud at the Common Council meeting.
Okay. Pat, do you want anything on that?
That's about as accurate as I think you could put it.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing more to it, right? So when we hear that number 32, that is just, what, patrol officers?
That would be patrol and investigators.
Oh.
Yep, and our detectives.
Okay, who are not lieutenants or assistant police chief?
Correct.
Basically. Okay. So 32 plus what? I'm going, 7 here? Is that how many? How big is the department now? Or
We've got 40 sworn.
okay. All right. And that's about consistent with what we've traditionally had here?
Yep.
That's okay. So at any one time, there's how many officers on the street?
I don't know if we want to divulge that.
Yeah, right? And where are they sitting right now? When I leave at 11, where should I avoid?
The typical patrol shift is 6 officers and a shift commander. Now, that doesn't take into consideration that at any given time there might be 1 or 2 off. Our goal in the city is to run with no less than 4 and a shift commander, so 5 first responding officers.
Okay. And again, in basically on the street, meaning in patrol vehicles, that type of thing?
Correct.
And just kind of, okay. All right, well, very good. Well, we wanted to address that just to kind of reassure the community. And I think, wasn't that important for you guys? Don't you want to sort of say, hey, look, like you said, Pat, one person doesn't define an organization or whatever. Every organization has had, something like this happen to them. So I'm sure it was sort of like, we just kind of want to address this and maybe reassure the community. One of the 2, protective services that we have, I think it was probably important for you guys to be able to do that, right?
I would absolutely agree with that, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
All right. Travis, anything else to add to that?
No, I was going to say the exact same thing. It was nice of you to talk with us through that so that we can provide that reassurance, because that's ultimately what we want. We just want people to know that we're still here, we're still functioning
Right.
the way we were before, and we're going to respond like we did before, and just that extra reassurance.
Well, and I always try to put myself in, like, what if I wasn't in this job, and wasn't like in the know all the time or didn't have to report on this stuff? If I'm sitting at home or driving around in my car or whatever, what would I want to know?
Right.
What would I want to hear from these guys right now, and try to just put myself in, an average citizen's shoes who would be sitting there wondering, okay, I don't go to all the meetings, I don't get all the press releases. What are they not telling me, or what are they telling me that I need more information on, or something like that? So I figured, boy, any citizen who would maybe walk in here and host the show today, this is kind of maybe what they would want to hear from their leaders at the police department.
And completely understandable, and one of the challenges is what format do we get that out there, because, again, there are processes happening above us that are handled by entities that are well outside the police department. So
Right.
the last thing that we want to do is insert ourselves into something that would compromise
Yep.
any type of integrity, so the communication can be challenging in that way.
It can be, and that's a very good point, because people are thinking, oh, why aren't they just telling us everything? They're withholding information. They're saying, well, we have no comment, no comment, no comment. But I think Mike Myers, the former mayor and the current, he's a member of the Fire and Police Commission, said at the council the other night, if somebody says the wrong thing out of turn, it starts the whole process over again, and it throws the, now you got to, okay, now Pat Zepps went and said the wrong thing on Insight or something. Now we got to make that part of the investigation. Now we got to start you can't say, sir, you can't just say whatever comes to mind, or what even not that you guys know anything.
Right.
You probably know, less or the same as any of us do, but if you do say something that, that might raise a red flag, now that sort of resets the whole process, and now we got to wait even longer to get any answers, right?
Right.
And that's why we have to be so careful here, so.
Exactly.
That's why I'm trying not to ask the wrong question.
We appreciate that.
But I'm glad you I wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of clear the air and just talk to the community for a second about this, because I know people are sort of wondering, not only wondering, but just maybe worried about, gosh, what is, if I need to call the police, as a taxpayer, you want, one of 6 things to happen. If I call for an ambulance, it better show up. If I need a police officer, it better show up. If I need, if I have a fire, the truck better come. If I set my garbage out, it better disappear.
Exactly.
And if it snows, that better get plowed too, so I can get to work. These certain things we expect as taxpayers. And so I'm sure they're sitting there going, well, okay, are they going to show up if I make the call? And it sounds like you're going to show up.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So life goes on.
Correct.
Okay. Well, let's get to some other stuff after we take a break. Assistant Police Chief on our Insight program today. You guys must have smelled the donuts, right? Is that what it was? The donuts.
I saw them. I didn't smell them.
Okay.
We can't eat those in public.
We know what your weakness is. How do we get the cops on Insight? Well, just set out a box of donuts and they show up. I know, I'm just kidding, but But glad you guys are here. So, Pat, we talked a little, just briefly before the show about, okay, what do you guys want to talk about, because, it's not like there's, a different agenda every day for cops, it's sort of the same routine issues that you're going to be, I don't know, patrolling, enforcing, focusing on, or whatever. Obviously, the difference this year is COVID-19. And so maybe just address that issue. I know you guys have probably talked about it with Jeff. I don't hear every program, believe it or not, but I'm sure you've touched on it at least to a degree. But what is the latest? What are you guys doing in terms of COVID? Because and the reason I bring this up is because it changes all the time. For instance, the Rapids PD, or City Hall basically, just closed off basically their entire police department except for like an intercom thing in the foyer or something. So maybe just give our listening audience a general sense of what's being done, how might it affect them and their access to the police department, and anything new that's happening right now.
Sure, and I think with our job, the main focus is to make sure that we have enough people to respond. So we really approached it on what steps do we have to take to keep us the safest that we can. Some of the things we have done, there's not going to be any type of a major impact to the community, but we have stopped, and we did this early on in the process, tours and ride-alongs, unnecessary exposures. I mean, certainly not downplaying the importance those play. So as soon as we're past this, those things will start up again. We do have some limited access to people coming past our lobby. The individuals that do have to come past the lobby, we ask that they wear a mask. The officers are wearing masks, and we've had some COVID exposures in the department. But thankfully, we've been able to weather the storm thus far. As officers go out on a quarantine or something of that matter, we're able to get officers back. So I think what we're doing is working. And we've also cut down on some of our staff travel. Training is an important part of our job. We've kind of geographically limited how far we'll send officers to be consistent with where the fire department's at. And by doing that, it takes away the necessity to stay in a hotel, which we feel is important. It also keeps them closer to home in case we need them. So everybody's kind of on standby. We're going to have to pick up some shifts if somebody goes out, but I'm very thankful everybody's done a great job, and we've been able to maintain staffing. So.
Wow. And again, you have to be so careful, because one guy or gal, and that can take out an entire shift, and now we're in real trouble, right?
I would also like to add, too, that our partnering agencies, Wood County Sheriff's Department, Wisconsin Rapids Police Department, have been really good. Early on in the process, we've come up with a mutual aid agreement. I've got a great working relationship with Sheriff Sean Becker to cover shifts if need be, and we'll do the same for them. So there is some of that interagency collaboration going on in the event that we do have a shift taken out or a much bigger exposure than we've had.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I'm sure there are deputies that sort of cover the, Marshfield end of the county or live here or close by that could respond pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that or even realized that was going on. Have you had to utilize that?
Not from the standpoint of staffing. I mean, there's always some interagency working. If we need some backup and they're available, or for whatever reason our officers are tied up on something, the county is unbelievably good in helping us out. And I would say the same for Marathon County to the north with our portion of city there. Great working relationships with those counties. So those collaborations always go on, and we haven't really had to come to where we've got to insert officers from different departments into different shifts. But it's certainly out there if we need it, that coverage. So.
We're one officer down. Guess what? The assistant chief has to go out in a squad today and pick up a patrol shift. No.
Promise?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, any day, right?
I miss it.
Yeah, do you?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. But that, and the way it's set up, can that even happen?
Sure. I mean,
you could, if you had to, you could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, I wear a uniform. I'll hop in a squad if needed. I'm a police officer first. I've held that mentality. There's, with times like these, there are many things I have to get done, but first and foremost, if there's something emergent and I'm here, I'm going to go if needed.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it's different within, departments within the city. I remember asking a street superintendent that once, if you're a man or two down for plowing snow, don't you just jump in the truck and go? And he's like, I'm not even allowed to touch the keys to that thing, because of, like you guys said before, represented, non-represented, union, not, that kind of thing. He's like, I better not, I can't even put gas in the thing for these guys. And that's just the way that particular structure is set up. But I would think law enforcement probably is a little different than plowing snow, I would hope anyway, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's some things I'll self-admittedly am a little rusty on, but be a great backup officer. I can muddle my way through most things yet. I did it for a long time. So.
Yeah, right. You can still, put a pair of handcuffs on without looking too awkward, right?
I think so, yeah.
Travis, what about from your standpoint in COVID? What's been the impact at your level of the department, and what things, I always say, what hoops have you had to jump through now?
Well, with not supervising patrol shifts anymore and supervising the detective bureau, well, and even with the patrol shifts, one of the things that we've mentioned in the past that might change as far as our service goes to citizens is we have told officers, hey, if you can make a phone call on a relatively minor complaint that doesn't require photographs, evidence collection, things like that, we're okay with that right now, and we would much rather do face-to-face contact. I think that's valuable for the citizens, and it's valuable for the officers to interact that way, but we've tried to cut back a little bit in that area too, and make those phone calls when we can, just to reduce those exposures. Otherwise, within the department, you had mentioned earlier, how one person can be infected and then take out an entire shift, and I think the things that we've put in place within the department, and really stressing the social distancing, wearing of the mask, sanitizing. Our custodian does an excellent job of going around and wiping every door handle and computer and phone and squad equipment down as much as possible, and we rely on the officers to do that as well. That has really, I can't think of any other thing that has prevented us from having like an entire shift wiped out other than those precautionary measures. And so I think our officers taking that seriously has kept us able to continue to respond to calls with adequate staffing.
Yeah. So in other words, it probably wouldn't happen if one officer picked up something. It wouldn't take a whole shift out, it sounds like.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully all those things that I mentioned have been preventing and will continue to prevent that.
Anything else from the COVID standpoint that people should know about, or that you need or want to let the community know about, or not?
I would add that we're by no means experts in this area.
Join the club.
And, realizing there's different opinions on the effectiveness of masks or whatnot, the position that we take is that we've really got to rely on the health department right now, and we've done that throughout the process. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that the health department has been really, really pivotal and awesome to work with as far as helping us look at what we should and shouldn't be doing. So, and generally we follow that guideline.
And there's no, I'm trying to think of like mask mandate ordinances, whatever they've tried to pass or whatever. I don't think there's anything in place right now that you guys would even have to enforce or even would enforce, right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. I'm not going to mask prison or jail or COVID, the COVID clink or whatever. But anything else COVID related that you guys want to?
Nothing pops to
Not
mind.
that I can think of, just again, like earlier, the reassurance that we're going to respond, regardless, and we'll take as much precaution as we can to protect the people that we're dealing with by wearing our masks when we show up, and if we can make phone calls instead, we'll do that, but otherwise our services are still moving on like they were before.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good to hear. Also, Travis, you mentioned, when I kind of asked you briefly before the show, what do you guys want to talk about? And you mentioned something that I had not thought about, and it is a topic that is, I don't know, so confusing. You look at these, and we're talking about overnight parking. And, you got to park on, this side of the street during a full moon, this side of the street while there's snow, this side of the street while there's fireworks. I'm being ridiculous, but I don't think people realize how it changes, and it kind of flip-flops, and depending on what's happening at any particular time of the year. Overnight parking, what is... What
Yeah.
are the rules that we have to play by here?
So I think some of what you're referencing has been changed. So there was a
Okay.
period of time where we went through sort of a confusing parking ordinance, and that has been cleaned up and fixed. And so now it's relatively simple. So between November 1st and April 30th, there's no overnight parking on city streets. And what we mean by overnight parking is really just between the hours of 2:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. And the only way that that can change is, obviously outside of those months, no parking signs that previously existed, or a snow emergency gets declared, and then obviously, then there's no parking any time of the day. But we do our best to try to be a little bit lax on that when those snow emergencies come out during the day. We work closely with the street department to try to get vehicles removed in the downtown districts and things like that, and we're not looking to tow a bunch of vehicles or anything. We try to run license plates, find owners, get those removed in those types of circumstances. But the parking ordinance, I agree, was confusing for a lot of people, but it has been cleaned up. It's relatively simple now, and it's just a reminder that we're at November 13th right now, and technically on November 1st, the overnight parking started. And so generally what we'll do on patrol is issue some courtesy warnings for these first couple weeks here to get people back in the groove and the routine again of that no overnight parking, and then citations will start getting issued throughout the winter season if that's not abided by in the future.
Okay. And that's, I think you said through April?
April 30th, yes.
Okay.
So all the way through the end of April, and we've talked about ending that earlier, but in the last number of years here, we can get some pretty good doses of snowstorms in April yet, and we can't have everybody parked on the street so the street department can get their job done.
So now, between April and October, is it a free-for-all? I was always under the impression you could not park on city streets overnight, during certain hours, period, regardless of time of year?
Now, unless it's signed, you can park on any city street overnight within those months between May, basically, and end of October.
Okay. That I didn't know. See, I thought we were still under that, where you shouldn't park. Or it was always, I got to let the PD know if I'm going
Right.
to have,
Okay.
we got too many relatives staying at the house. Somebody's going to park on the street. I better let the PD know that they're on the street so they don't get ticketed. That's what you used to have to do.
Right.
And so now you don't have to do that anymore.
No,
Okay.
but during those winter months, we try to make wise decisions. You can call up the shift commander. We try not to advertise it, but if you have family members over during Christmas and we're not expecting a snowstorm and there's nowhere else for people to park, obviously we're going to try to work with people and make those exceptions so that people can enjoy their holiday together.
Okay, yeah, and that was just a recent change, I think, within the last year or two?
Right, I think about 2 years.
Okay. So that's the overnight parking rule. Again, it'll all change if there's a, snow emergency, something like that.
Right.
And then you can't park anywhere until
Correct.
further notice or what have you, or during the, the duration that the snow emergency is in effect, which, you guys are pretty, I don't know, what's the right word? You guys are pretty, I don't want to say aggressive or ambitious about it, but you do take it seriously, right? Pat, you want to address the fact that, look, no parking during a snow emergency means no parking. So do you
Correct,
ticket
yeah.
people? Do you just go out and start writing tickets, or do you give them a chance to move, or what?
Absolutely, we give them a chance to move.
Okay.
We'll do everything we can to try to find the owner and give them a call and say, hey, we got to get this moved. Because the problem is you may end up towing a car. That's pretty few and far between. Ultimately, what happens is the plow goes around it, and
Yeah.
depending on where the car is located. But the last thing we want to do is ticket people, so we'll do our due diligence to try to find out who they are.
Okay.
And I would say we're more successful than not.
Oh, okay. So it's not like you have to penalize a bunch of people just because they're trying to whatever, but you do see those cars that have been plowed around and sort of
Yeah.
plowed in somewhere, and you go, didn't that guy doesn't everyone listen to the radio station? Didn't he get the message? Does he not know we're probably under a snow emergency?
We try to get those out on our Facebook page, and I know the city's,
But even if
Facebook
you
page,
don't
too.
see or hear a message,
Right.
doesn't it seem pretty obvious that we'd probably be under a snow emergency
if
at
there's,
times?
3 feet of snow coming,
Right.
Right.
at least check to see.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else on no parking?
No, I want to keep it that simple, hopefully, so
Yeah.
that way we don't
Thank you.
confuse anybody moving forward.
Thank you. It did get confusing there for a while, because there was literally a point in time where you had, depending on the time or day or
Right.
whatever, you had to switch sides of the
Correct.
street.
Yep. odd and even numbered side parking in
Yeah.
different months, and yeah. It
Oh,
was-
yeah, that's right. It was odd
Right.
numbered months. You were on, yeah.
Right, yeah, it was challenging. We made cheat sheets to help us get it through it
I don't
ourselves,
blame you,
so.
but then there are those certain streets like I'm thinking of, because I used to live off of like one that just had ditches.
Yep,
Yep.
It didn't have curb and
Right.
gutter, so some of these really narrow streets, I don't think there's, even though it might not be signed, you shouldn't park on those anyway, right?
well, they had considered as unimproved, and that was part of that ordinance that we're talking about earlier. I think, I may be wrong on this, but I think that most of those streets now that were unimproved have now been signed to restrict parking only to the one side, so we wouldn't have to have the confusing measures in place as to when you could or couldn't. And the sole focus of that, obviously, is that we want to be able to get emergency equipment through on those roadways if people are parked on both sides. And so when you're talking
Right.
about gigantic fire trucks and things trying to get through to a house to help, we can't have people
Well,
parked.
that was the example I was going to use, those ladder trucks.
Right,
I mean, you're going to lose every time to that thing. Those are huge, and even parking on one side, sometimes it's going to be
Right.
tight because you're up against mailboxes and other things on the other side that you could wipe out in a pinch if, you were trying to squeeze through there with
Right.
something.
yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let's take a break, and we'll come back with our Insight program. Travis Esser, Lieutenant with the Marshfield Police Department, Pat Zepps, Assistant Police Chief, with us on the Insight program today. Stick around, we've got more after this. On the Insight program, Friday the 13th. Oh boy, and the cops are here. Oh, what could go wrong? We brought donuts to keep them at bay. Sit, Ubu, sit.
Yeah,
Good cop.
we own that.
Good, yeah. You guys have fun with it.
Yeah.
You always have. It's one of those cliche kind of things, but you guys, Pat Zepps with us and Travis Esser, you guys have done a good job, and maybe that's something we can talk about here before we run out of time. The fact that, I don't know, maybe this was before COVID, and maybe you haven't done it since, but you guys were always good about getting out there and then trying to communicate with the community. I think Dunkin' Donuts did some stuff with you guys to have fun with donuts and cops and coffee with a cop and that kind of thing. I don't know, Pat, is all that kind of stuff on hold?
It is, and I didn't touch on that earlier when I specifically talked about the police department, but the coffee with the cop, some of those other types of things, they are, and recognizing how valuable those are. Every December, we would do a community event down where we would grill up some hamburgers and hot dogs and hand them out during the wine walk, really in conjunction with Mackey's event, and that was always a really nice event. But obviously it hurts to not be able to do those things, and there's a loss of communication, but again, the primary function has to be having enough people here to respond to emergencies. And,
Right,
And
yeah.
really that's where we're at. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and those, did you find those helpful? Did people take advantage of those things? And were you able to communicate in a way that you'd hoped to do with the events like that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we enjoy most is letting people know that we're just people too, and just meeting them at wherever they're at and being able to meet them in situations that aren't chaotic or full of conflict and that type of thing. And so them getting to know us as people is very valuable, I think, and that should be what our citizens expect, that they have police officers that aren't robots and that they can see us for who we are and we can relate to them in a variety of ways. And so those events are certainly missed, but like Pat said, unfortunately, it's just kind of the way things are right now.
Yeah, because you did have the event down at Wenzel Plaza, I think it was this past summer, right? Where a bunch of law enforcement people from Marshfield, Wood County, a lot of guys and gals were out there talking with the community, right? Wasn't
Yeah. That was early on, I think, as far as where we were at with that, and that was set up with the intent of a real pivotal event had happened that shook the trust of law enforcement with what happened in Minneapolis. So
Oh, right.
that was really looked at the time as necessary. Would that be the forum we would do today with how bad COVID is and knowing more about it? Well, that's probably subject to debate.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was important to connect with people. And there was really no agenda one way or the other with that, other than to put us out there and get some dialogue going. So,
And saying, look, that's not who we are.
right.
You know, what happened is very isolated, and, you know, you could check with, you know, every department in the country, and they would probably all say the same thing. Yeah,
And I think the level of attendance at that really validated the need.
yeah.
We couldn't be silent on that issue. We had to stimulate some conversation. And so, you know, like I said, looking back, I mean, I can't say we would do that today with how bad COVID is, and we know more now, but at the time, I really think that was something that had to be done.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it's been, I don't know what's going on in the you know, the alignment of the stars or planets or what, but, you know, just this year, COVID aside, I mean, we've had, you know, all these issues like in Minneapolis, and then, you know, you have Kenosha, and all these things, and it just seems like police-involved shootings are just off the charts, and people are, what is it? Are just people braver than they've ever been, and cops don't scare them anymore, or what? I don't know what's going on. But, you know, it just seems like cops, yeah, I feel bad. You guys, it just seems you can't catch a break, you know?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, because you're absolutely right. The grand scheme of things, it doesn't look good. The challenge, I think, that's out there is to look at each one of them as an isolated incident and not lump them together. And I'm by no means saying that what happened was wrong or right on any of these cases, because I do believe in the process. And if laws, rights were violated, then those police officers need to be held accountable. But I think that's the struggle we're in, is that, you know, there's a lot of media out there, and really it's not in our favor. And in our job, one can do so much damage. And I guess the only real message I could give to the community is that understand that we don't want bad cops out there either. The vast majority of police are good. You've heard this before. I know it kind of is a token comment, but like any job, there are bad people in it, and there are people who make mistakes. There are good people in it who make bad mistakes. There's an obligation on our part to hold those people to a level of accountability, and I'm confident that will happen. I don't know that it's always happened, but that's the best we can work towards.
Right. Travis, anything on that?
Agree. I mean,
Agree,
I
yeah.
don't know how we got to where we're at either. It's
Yeah,
been quite the
right.
year, but
You got
yeah,
that right.
I think Pat kind of hits it on the head. If we can look at those incidences separately instead of in the totality.
Yeah, because I think, you know, again, I go back to, I try to put myself in that position. You guys, in a lot of cases, not every instance, but, you know, patrol officers especially, split-second decision-making, and you don't have time to have a board meeting or, you know, have a tabletop exercise about, oh, what do we do now? Because this guy, is he reaching for his, what's in the waistband? He's going into his car. What is he doing in the, what's he gonna pull, what, you know, I gotta make a decision now based on my training and everything else, and I'm sorry, but I'll take a pass. You guys, you know, I don't know how you do it. How do you make, you know, there's training obviously involved with, but you got to make, and kudos to you guys, because this department has really been a leader in that whole non-lethal thing. You know, rubber bullets and this and that and the other thing that you use besides real bullets.
We've had some very good outcomes
Yeah.
with less lethal options.
Beanbags, that was the other thing.
Right.
I was trying to think of beanbag rounds and rubber bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you know which one? It's not like you got 3 sidearms, you know, okay, I'm either going to reach for the rubber bullets, the beanbags, or the real gun. It's not like, right? You got
Right,
to
and-
load
and-
something up at some point, and you got to be ready.
Some of it is time. I mean, if there's
Yeah.
time to get a less lethal option,
Right.
that's what we do. You know,
Okay.
a lot of the individual dictates our timeline most of the time, and you know, there are no easy answers to that.
Again, I just, kudos to you guys. You know, the training only takes you so far.
One thing I'd like to throw out there too, and when COVID is done, I think it's very valuable for community members who have those types of questions and the need to know. We do a Citizens Academy that I don't know that anybody's ever related to me they had a bad experience. They walk away from that with a real up close look at departmental day-to-day operations, and I think that's really good. The other thing I would do is, again, post-COVID, encourage people to come and do those ride-alongs and see what that looks like from that standpoint. It really stimulates some dialogue and an understanding.
It's valuable. I went through the Citizens, Police Academy thing, probably 15 years ago already. Now, I will not say it was without incident. There were several incidents. Stroik handcuffed me to the desk. And, of course, he had it out for me from day one. I had a target on my back, but he did handcuff me to the desk, and I did not appreciate that. Other than that, I guess there were, no incidents to report.
I haven't seen that in my time here, so
Yeah.
15 years may be too late, but I'll
And
apologize.
No.
Yeah, all in good fun.
Absolutely. Actually, I'd asked to borrow, I was involved with a play, a production of a play. I can't even remember what it was for, but the list of props called for a pair of handcuffs. Well, that was his way of giving them to me. Snuck up behind me, and I got to tell you, he was really good with those things. I'm sitting there, and the next thing I know, I'm handcuffed to the desk, and I'm going, how did you do that? You did that, and I didn't even know about it. Wow, is he good with those things? So I was handcuffed, but it was all, like you said, it was a lot of fun and very, very eye-opening. I'll never forget the high-speed chase. What's the word I'm thinking of? Reenactment.
Yep.
And you're trying to reenact a high-speed chase up at the fairgrounds, and I found it fascinating because we got back in the classroom, and I don't know, it might have been Steve Liu that was doing it that night, and he said, okay, how fast do you think we were going? And people are throwing out these absurd numbers. We were going at least 40 miles an hour, 40, 50, and I'm going, I was in the back seat and actually looked at this. It was like 10 to 15 miles an hour.
Yeah.
People don't realize how fast you're not going in those situations. So
Turn a siren on, it always seems like you're going a lot faster, right?
yeah, the siren makes you go faster, doesn't it? All right, well, we're out of time, fellas, but certainly under the circumstances, appreciate you still coming in and stepping up to the plate and, saying what probably needed to be said in this particular situation and what people, face the music kind of thing, and here's what our department is all about, and here's what our department is not all about. You could have easily said, under the circumstances, we better not do this program, but I think it was probably good to do it.
Thank you.
Agreed. Thank
Anything else? As I ask him with like seconds left in the show. But going to come back next month?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll have a full agenda again
Sure.
in December. Well, you guys stay safe. Keep up the good work. We always appreciate you guys doing what you do 24/7, If people always wonder, between the hours of, nobody's working. You guys are always on duty, ready to answer that call, and we certainly appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.